Morning all, welcome to LoveWorkLife's webinar. This week we are doing all sorts of different things on this week's webinar. So this week we are looking at extended lockdown and a pivot to up, unlock and up. So a very sort of tongue-tying, catchy title there for us. Paul, you all right this morning?
I'm absolutely wonderful and marvellous. Thank you, Howard.
Brilliant. As people are sort of joining in and just coming onto the webinar, can people confirm either in the question box or the chat box that you can actually hear us? Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Lauren. So people can obviously hear us. That's really good news. Cheers, Dave. Are you good? I hope you're well, Dave. Happy birthday to you, Dave. I hope you had a good one at the weekend.
Hi, Neil. How are you? How's the beard coming on?
Good, so everyone can hear us. Okay, so just give it a couple more minutes as more people kick on. Obviously, we like to be nice and punctual, but obviously not everyone's punctual. Dave, sorry, it was your missus's birthday. Misread your Twitter feed, Dave. Sorry about that, but good man. So, as we start to sort of crank up and people are sort of flooding in.
Which restaurant did you take her to, Dave?
Let's see if we can get Dave on here, and then we can ask Dave questions directly. That'd be better.
Okay, I think we're good to go, Howard.
You are. Dave, can you hear us?
Morning, guys.
Morning, Dave.
Hello,
how are you?
Hello, young man. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. How are you guys?
All right, which restaurant did you take your missus to? This is what we want to know.
Yeah, Casa, the living room. It's impossible. No, we had a good time with the family. Played some games. Nice, nice day just in the house. Got some decent food and a few drinks, but yeah, it was good. It was very different, but good.
Yeah, well, there you go. This is the cheapest. This is the cheapest birthday you're ever going to have, as far as...
There's definitely that as well, yeah. So
there you go. In years ahead, you'll be thinking, oh my God, you know, if only we didn't have to go out. That would be the way again.
Yeah. Remember how good that one was. Let's do it again.
Happy birthday to your other half.
Good man, Dave. Cheers, right, we'll mute you back down again, mate. We'll bring you back in if you want to come back in. So let's kick off. Obviously, it was announced this week that, or end of last week, that we have another 3 weeks minimum of lockdown. And Paul and I were very sort of keen to sort of look at how you're going to sort of galvanise and rejuvenate your people to move forward. Because a lot of people, you know, knew that it was coming. Some people were thinking not too sure how long it's going to go. But I certainly think there is potential light at the end of the tunnel, as certainly other countries are now starting to sort of reduce their lockdown procedures and allowing people to start partially going back to work, and where we'll be in that. So I think keeping colleagues enthused, engaged and energised is really important. And I think over the last 4 webinars, Paul and I have talked an awful lot about lots of things to try help people and help businesses move forward. And I think it's now important that as the world really starts to settle down into that sort of inverted commas new way of working, that we start to move forward as well. Because I think what's happened certainly at the beginning, there's been a big disconnect between colleagues because they're all working remotely, between clients and candidates, again, because they're working remotely. So what we want to do is give you ideas of what some of our clients have been doing to sort of help, as I say, rejuvenate their people, galvanize their people. But also what we want you to do is we want you to ask questions or throw things into the chat box that you feel that you've been doing, so you can really sort of open up to ourselves as well and open up to the people on the webinar and give them ideas of how you can help from there. So the first thing we always talk about is that mission, vision and values, and what you've been doing with your staff with regarding that to help them become more energized, more enthused and more involved in the business. So Paul, I'm sort of interested in what you've got to say and what you've been doing with your clients, and I can sort of give you sort of verbatim what we've been doing with my clients as well.
So basically, you know, in terms of, you know, really where we're at right now, I mean, I've just done a video, which I'm hoping will finally upload onto LinkedIn, but I was talking about the fact that if you watch the news, as I did last night, it's enough to make you want to slit your throat, because a lot of the information that you're getting from the journalists seems to me to be sensationalism. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that this isn't a dreadful, awful time, because it clearly is. But, there's an awful lot of misinformation out there. You get one person's opinion about what's going on in the world. And if you tune into the news too regularly, or you're looking online constantly throughout the day, you can get pretty low, to be honest. I felt pretty low after the news last night, and I thought, well, hang on. I think we're actually much closer to the end of this. Well, we clearly are much closer to the end of this. And to a point where I think that things will start moving fairly quickly. I'm already hearing about, in some sectors, companies slowly going back to work. And I think when we get into early to mid-May, I think that slowly, in a phased manner, organizations will be getting back into something that resembles a working pattern. It's obviously going to take a very long time for us to get back to what we would term normal, but every step we take will be a step further towards normal, and we'll certainly be in a better place than we have been over the last 3 to 4 weeks. So I think that if our own people are looking at the news and are constantly reviewing what's going on out there, according to the so-called experts, who frankly know about as much as the rest of us common folk, then I think that they're going to get themselves into a pretty low place. And this is the challenge. We've got to keep our people firmly engaged and very much of a view that things are going to improve, that it's not as bleak and as dark as the news will have you believe. And our job is to keep them upbeat, optimistic, and very much involved with the business. And I think as leaders, that for us is a very important point, that we ourselves cannot be too drawn into all of the gloom and doom. We've got to be very upbeat. We've got to be of the view that things are definitely on the move, or will be very shortly. And just drawing in our people and getting them revved up, now starting to get them revved up, ready for the sort of commencement of business, is very important. And so I'm very interested to understand from the people that are coming in and listening to this, just what their views are. What are you guys doing to draw in your people, particularly the furloughed staff? If you have people furloughed, how are you keeping them engaged with you? How are you re-energizing or thinking now of re-energizing them to get to the point where we're beginning to move forward, getting ready to start engaging with clients again, properly engaging, talking about business, properly engaging with candidates and talking to them about moving jobs, getting their CVs smartened up, ready to go, interview tips and techniques, all those things that we need to be doing. What are you doing right now to start to get them to that headspace that's much more about a positive future than the sort of lockdown mentality that we've all had recently? And I'm keen to hear your views right now. So have you got any views, guys? I'm sure you have. Perhaps you could share them with us.
I think whilst people are firing questions in and their thoughts in, Paul, I think what's important is that certainly both you and I, between us, we've got 70 plus years of recruitment experience. We've been managing big companies and small companies.
That's 69 years for you, Howard, and one for me, obviously. I just want to make that point.
And one of that is, what we're doing now at LoveWorkLife is coaching and mentoring businesses to grow, but helping with that strategic development. And I think it's important that the strategy that people adopt now has to change. We always talk about the rhythm of a business, and that when new people come into a business, they gather that rhythm of the business and they start to work with that business. Well, that rhythm has been massively disrupted and massively changed now. And it's gaining that rhythm back that's really important. And that's both furloughed staff and existing staff that's in there and what they're doing. So Karen Court's just come on as well, said for our internal staff who are furloughed, we've been doing some fun activities each Friday. So let's see if I can find Kerry on the list, and then I shall try invite Kerry in.
So it took, the first question revolves around alcohol. Have you noticed? You there, Kerry?
But if I can find Kerry, Paul, it'd be nice, but I can't seem to find it.
Can't find Kerry. You must be there, Kerry.
There we go. Kerry, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Hi.
Brilliant. Nice to speak to you, Kerry.
Hey,
How are
Kerry.
you?
Yeah, and you. Good, thank you.
Very interesting to see what you've been doing, both internal staff and furloughed staff.
Yeah, so we've had to furlough some of our internal staff within our recruitment business. So to keep them engaged and to keep them feeling part of the team, we're still inviting them to the morning meetings so that they're keeping talking with everyone. On a Friday, we do a pub quiz or a game of sorts where we invite everyone in the business, furloughed or not, to join in, which usually lasts a good couple of hours just to keep the motivation going.
So yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. Sorry, Howard. I think it's a brilliant idea. I know several of my clients are doing pub quizzes, and they have themed silly hat Fridays and SHIT shirt Fridays and those kind of things. And I think all those things are a great idea, and it keeps people engaged and part of the team. It keeps your ethos going, and it draws people in, doesn't it, Kerry? I think they appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been received really, really well. And we're shouting about it on social media platforms to show we are still very much connected and a team. And it's been received really well from other people as well.
I think that's really interesting, Kay, that you're posting that on social media. And I've always been an advocate of stating on social media that, recruitment is always being great at destroying ourselves on social media by saying we're very professional, we're very this, we're very that, and here we are all out having a beer and spending all our clients' well-earned money on ourselves. But I think now is an opportunity where we can change that and doing things where it is more communal, such as a pub quiz. Neil Simmons is on there. They've talked about they're doing quite lots of quizzes, Friday afternoon drink sessions, etc., but also doing training. I'll bring you on in a minute, Neil, to discuss the training. I think it's important that clients now start to see that there is a human element to the recruiter, and we're not just those transactional people, and we're not just people out for a good time, that we are very, very key to the marketplace, but we're also very good at what we do. And I think by pushing some of the social media stuff that I've seen going out, I think clients are getting a different view of recruitment agencies. It's not just what they think we are, that we are a very, very tight band of brothers, that we work together and drive the right things across. And I think getting that across to the marketplace will certainly help the market. So thanks for your comments there, Kerry. Let me just try and bring Neil Simmons in there, because Neil's come out with a couple of comments there. Let's just try and find Neil.
No, can we get Neil? Actually, we actually see Neil because he's got something that's resembling a ginger beard. I think the world needs to see this.
I'll try to do that, but it's trying to find Neil on this thing, which isn't great.
Okay, well, whilst I'm waiting for you, Neil, to appear, just a question I'd want to raise as well. I think the social ideas are brilliant, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I also think it's about starting to talk about how quickly we can engage now with our clients, because I suspect that to talk about a very somber point, as the death count now is dropping and the government are beginning to talk about getting in control and being able to cope, I think morale will start rising with both candidates and clients. There'll be a sense that things are hopefully moving into a better place. And it would seem to me that starting to engage with clients about what they're going to do when they return to work in terms of taking on staff, both permanently and interim, we're at that place. I think we're very close now, if not now, to start beginning to engage with clients around their thoughts and plans. Most of them hopefully will be back at work within the next 4 to 6 weeks in one shape or form. We were worried before about engaging in that conversation. We spoke about only talking to clients from a soft touch perspective, very pastoral. How are you? How's the family? I think we're now moving into a space, whilst that's still important, where we can start asking questions about their plans. So I want to talk about that in just a minute, but we've got Neil now, I think, online.
Can you hear us, Neil?
Yeah, hi guys, how you doing?
Very well.
Neil.
I know that Paul's just jealous that I've got more hair on my chin than he's got on the top of his head now.
It's a hard thing to deny that, Neil. I can't. Mind you, tell us about the things you've been doing.
Yeah, so like Kerry was just saying, we meet for Friday drinks, we do quizzes. We meet once a week as well. We've always had training as a whole team on a Thursday, and we've continued to do that with everyone, all the furlough staff and everything. What was tricky about this was thinking about what we can put in place, and I'd be really open to any suggestions on the chat on this, training-wise, because obviously they're not going to be making spec calls, they're not going to be doing sales calls or CRM calls if they're on furloughs, and everyone's at different stages. So we did one of the weeks that we did training. It was more a sort of a bit of a I guess a group therapy counselling type session. So we talked to every single person about what the bad things were about lockdown, and we went round the circle, and it was kind of a little bit solemn, but everyone was able to get things off their chest, talk. Then other people had input on what was said, and then we went round and said, all right, great. Well, what are the things that have changed for the better due to lockdown? And everyone went round and talking about the time with their families, the time to catch up on the stuff that they hadn't done, etc. So that was really good. And then last week we did for training, we looked at our job form, our existing job form, and how we might be able to improve it. So the questions that we asked, and we went around to every team member. And what was interesting about that was every single person had really good input. And as a result of that, our job form has actually improved hugely. Even the most junior members of the team who've only been in recruitment 5 minutes had some great suggestions as to how we could actually improve. So it really worked well.
Any particular suggestions that worked, Neil, in relation to generating roles? What particular techniques can you pass on?
So it was actually improving the questions that we were asking our clients about when we were taking jobs on. So, crikey, you put me on the spot now. There were some great suggestions that came up. I'm going to have to look back at the notes, but as a result of, so things like asking about dress code, which we never did previously, why the role has come about. There's probably other recruiters here raising their eyes going, we always ask that. Working from home potential, now that we've been through this, we need to be asking our clients when we take on a vacancy, is there working from home potential? Because a lot of companies will actually have found ways of setting their staff up. One of my clients has actually been talking about the fact that they're going to make it a thing for their office to have one day a week where everyone can work from home, and obviously rotate that.
That's interesting.
So putting it out there to ask questions based around that, and really making sure that we're getting as thorough an understanding of the job. I mean, there's tons of stuff that came up, but those were the key points for us.
I think Neil, from my perspective, is that we've been doing training sessions on a Wednesday at 1:00 on a webinar session for everybody. And again, what we've been trying to do is adapt it to the new way of working and what's going on, and looking what was good in the past and what will be brilliant in the future. And I think what you're doing there about it's very easy, I think, for recruiters, certainly established recruiters, to go back and really look at what they are doing really, really well, and then relaying that back to your other people. But it's also sometimes quite refreshing. And I always think that when I bring a new person into a business and spend time with them, training and develop them, they ask those questions that almost like a child question of why are you doing that? And I think sometimes the answer is because we've always done it is now no longer an option. And I think there's an opportunity to really upskill people's ability to converse with the client and converse with the candidate and gain far more information. And that is all about the questions that you ask, the in-depth questions that you ask, and how those questions are perceived. And I think I'm a firm believer is that when you start speaking to a candidate, it's almost like, and a client, it's almost the Pavlov dog syndrome. You want to get them to answer questions, and therefore you've got to start easing them in by speaking about them and talking about them, asking the easy questions. But sometimes it's those easy questions that lead to a lot more information that you may not have got before. That's the difference between a transactional recruiter that's just trying to put a bum on a seat and a really good relationship-based recruiter that's putting somebody in that actually fits the client's behavioral needs, the company ethos needs, etc., and not just the technical skills. Because I think the days of hiring on skills and firing on behaviors were well, documented prior to COVID-19. But I think now, as clients come out of COVID-19, they're going to understand the behavioral side of their business is key to their business and how their business work moves forward. So I think training is really important, and whether it's a weekly session or whether twice a week, etc., the more you can upskill your team now, the better your team will be. And Milo's sent a comment in as well, and I'll bring Milo in as well. And she said, Paul, I certainly hope our team have been I certainly hope our team have been working hard during this time. I'm not too sure you're talking about a football team or your business team.
No, it's Arsenal. Milo. So Milo, hi mate. We worked together at Hudson when I was there as Chief Operating Officer, and Milo was a very integral member of the legal team. He's a great guy. I haven't seen or spoken with him for ages, but we share the Arsenal misery together. That's the comment.
We do.
I hope our team. Here he is. Hi, Milo. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Paul. How are you?
I'm fine, mate. I'm very well indeed. And you're making a brilliant point here about training and upskilling is absolutely key now. And of course, we know that the government are actually encouraging furloughed staff to be training whilst they're at home. Because that's allowed under the furlough scheme, which I think is part of what you're thinking. And you're right to say that during this time of lockdown, it's a perfect opportunity for people to upskill and get their heads in the right space. And your point here about our team sitting on the sofa for this period, mind you, could they play any worse? Let's not even go there either. I know Neil's just been on as a Chelsea fan, but there's no accounting for taste. But I have to say, your point's very valid here. We have teams of people who are sitting at home and are getting maybe kind of conditioned to being at home, and what we've got to do is get them fit for battle, fit for the new world of work. Is that's presumably what you're
exactly
alluding to here?
Exactly, because I think in these times we have to. I totally agree about the point that, recruitment is a rhythm, especially. And I have always felt that your Monday morning is probably the most important because you set the rhythm for the week. And if you go in and you're really up for it and you're organized and you think about what you want to have, the outputs and the outcomes you want for that day, if you start a week like that, you normally have a good week. If you drift into Monday and you're catching up by Tuesday and by Wednesday, you've got a whole load of unread emails and uncompleted tasks, you normally have a very bad week. And I think people talk about luck in recruitment, but really we always make our own luck by just getting things done. And the inspiration I take from all of this is not only about football, because I always feel that if somebody is watching you perform, I've always felt recruitment's a very physical thing. You can tell people who are going to do well and bill and those who are not, because they're frankly not up for it. And my main inspiration comes from my wife, who is a NHS nurse. And I was talking to a client about a week and a half ago about a big transaction we've got going on at the moment. And he was having a bit of a head in the sand moment, saying, Milo, you don't understand about COVID-19 and we have to wait and see what happens. And I said, whoa, hang on. I said, so if you went to A&E this afternoon with COVID-19 or anything, and you met someone like my wife or any of her colleagues, and you said, you don't understand, we have to wait and see what happens, what would you say to her? You say, give your head a wobble, because they've got a job to do and got to get on with it. And I think we owe it to those people on the front line of this battle to get on with our jobs and to make sure we can control what we can control. We can't control COVID-19, we can't control the government, but we can control what we do and make sure that we're arming everybody with the information they need, the introductions they need, making sure processes are going smooth. And sometimes this training is just articulating that and putting it into practice so that when we go to work, whether at home or physically, we're ready to do that.
there's some really, as I say, Matt, some really good points there. And what I'm sort of hearing from lots of people are lots of things that we're introducing into our business because of the lockdown and because of COVID-19, and the way I think people will treat each other when they come out of that. You can always get those that are going to stick their head in the sand, but you're going to get those that are going to be very, very buoyant at what's going on. And that goes to what we put there on the screen: mission, vision, values. How many of the things that we're introducing now over the last 4 weeks are going to stay as part of your mission and part of your values in your business to keep your business moving forward? Because it's very easy, and I've worked in, big organizations and small organizations. What's strategically important is often forgone for what's urgent. And I think there's certain things now that become strategically important to the business and to the well-being of the business and your clients and your candidates that need to become critical and part of your values and part of your mission. And it'll be interesting to hear whether or not you're going to carry on doing the things as Neil was there. They're going to carry on doing the weekly training sessions, the weekly pub quiz type things, etc., that create a better bond within the business. I think it's really important that people start to think about that now, that this isn't just short term. This is going to change the way that we work forever. And therefore, we have to really change our processes forever to ensure that we don't get left behind. And this isn't just a one-off scenario that we're going to go. Because I think if we do, then we'll go backwards at a great rate of knots.
Milo, what training are your guys going through at the moment? Have you got specific training that you're getting them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. What I was doing is I was doing a updating and redrafting a complete guide to CVs and interviews, and so that they know. So we basically have a script for, because the first thing people always say when they find themselves in a difficult situation, I haven't done my CV for ages. What do I do? So it's having a template, all of the common sense things articulated, but also the new things, because of course, for the first time ever, a Zoom interview is a standard thing. So how does your background look? How is your connection? What are you checking beforehand? And then making sure that people feel confident that they are really armed with the information to deal with the here and now, but also absolutely best practice for recruitment.
I think you make a very good point. I was going to raise this myself. So here we are using Zoom. Every one of us has got used to using Skype, Zoom, the webinar methods of talking to each other. One of the things I'm very keen to do through my clients is to encourage them to get interviews for candidates, at least the initial interviews, arranged, if possible, online. And I think it's the Simon Sinek thing where he talks about you have your early adopters of about 20% who leap all over any new technology, anything that's new, and want to be the first kid on the block to be using it. And then you have 80% that might be termed the laggards, the people that are waiting for the early adopters to prove something works before they jump in. And I think that what we want to be trying to do to increase the number of interviews that we get is encouraging clients to have an initial discussion with candidates via the wonders of modern technology. I think it will increase the number of interviews we arrange. It's convenient for both parties. We can join that discussion, clearly, as we are right now using this medium. But what we're going to get are a lot of objections. We're going to get a lot of clients pushing back who are not necessarily on side yet, are a bit nervous of technology. And I think one of the things we need to train our people to do is to pitch these ideas, and I'm sure you'll have a million and one other ideas aside from mine, and deal with the objections that they're going to get. Because, as I already said, 8 out of 10 clients are likely to want to carry on as they were prior to the crisis, but the 2 or 3 out of 10 will want to embrace the new technologies. And I think we need to get our guys trained up. You mentioned a script to tell them how to approach clients and then how to deal with the objections they'll get, because not everybody's going to jump on board, but it's something that works for us. It will work for us very well. Recorded interviews, using this kind of media to get people to engage with each other, rather than sending CVs, which we all we all hate, let's be honest. You know, we spend our lives vetting CVs, and yet we send them to clients who then think, with no disrespect to our lovely clients, that they're more expert in reviewing CVs than we are. And they then say yes, or they say no. And we know it's a very imperfect method of presenting candidates. Yet if you put somebody in front of someone else and you have that one-to-one contact, we know that there's a stronger likelihood of some level of connection. So I'm very keen to get my clients to try to get candidates in front of clients by using things like this. And I think that we have to train our consultants to be able to present this as a method of meeting candidates and candidates meeting clients. How do we also prepare candidates to use this kind of media? What are they going to wear? As you said, the background behind them. What questions are they likely to have? Their body language, the way they look at the screen, and all those kind of things it's not new, but it is new. And I think the modern world of work, the one that we're going to enter, will be much more embracing of this type of medium. So I think that's something we need to think of, Milo. And I don't know if you are thinking in terms of doing that.
Absolutely. And I've found that what's been successful for me is I've actually had somebody interview via Zoom a couple of times last week with both New York and London. And he's based out in the home county somewhere here. And he'd never used Zoom. He's an older guy, and he really isn't a favourite technology, but he really embraced it. He loved it. And then I did the same with the clients. And then I actually, because they were, again, you know, I felt that I couldn't trust them to actually get it right. So I did the invite, and I basically hosted the meeting, but I just introduced them. I dropped out, but I could see that there they were. The meeting was going ahead. They were online talking. And that's the best feeling for any of us, right? To know that, you know, whatever you've arranged is actually going ahead smoothly without, you don't want to call in now and saying, well, I tried to call in, but it didn't work. And therefore I gave up, and we're going to try and rearrange. And the more you do that, the more you can actually just be evangelical about the technology, because it is really good. And you see all the, you know, the kids using it every day, completely second nature to them. So there's no reason why we can't have decision makers, having it become second nature for them, our clients, our candidates. And, you know, if people are insisting on meeting in the future, it's a great way to get ahead of the game and hopefully get a lot of things moving now.
I think that's really interesting, Milo, that you're looking at it in that way. That I've been talking to certain clients of mine on the technology front that can look at this in a whole different way. Because I think, you know, the geographical boundaries of recruitment now, because of things like Zoom, etc., are going to disappear, where you can now almost recruit anywhere, as you proved there, that you know, overseas recruitment. So I was also talking about, if you're good enough on Zoom and your client's good enough as well, why aren't we now video recording the job specifications, so we can then put the job specifications somewhere, either on a portal on our website, etc., that the candidates can log into, and therefore they get a far more in-depth feel of the client, and they get a view that that client is actually looking for that type of person, what they're working for. As we start to do, we now take the paper video CV into a video CV. As you're saying there, I think it's absolutely crucial that we control as much as we can. And so your interview process there of introducing the candidate to the client is really great. And what a great sort of little added advantage it is, an added benefit to both the candidate and the client, and how from a service point of view that just lifts you up a little bit. But I've taken it one step further, is that certainly at this time, you know, as we're coming out of this period, the video recording of an offer being given and then an offer being accepted by a candidate is really, really powerful, because it binds your candidate to you a little bit more. It binds your candidate to your client a little bit more. And obviously you're giving your client a really good view, saying, well, there's the video of the candidate accepting the offer. He's really pleased with the offer. That's what we've gone through. We've nailed everything down. And so that will potentially help with dropouts, because I think there'll be a lot of buybacks at this time. There'll be a lot of dropouts. There'll be a lot of counter offers going off as people start to move around. And so I think getting that actual offer video recorded and sent to your client is really important, and sent back to your candidate, so they have a genuine record of what's actually being said and what's being done. And I think it takes us to a whole different level of recruitment. So when we start to come back, then training the staff that have been furloughed and training your clients and your candidates on using this type of equipment is absolutely paramount to your success. And as Paul was saying, there's going to be what I would class as a Luddite. Those people that just have fear of technology will not embrace that, and therefore they'll start to get left behind, and there'll be a big divide in the marketplace, I believe, as we start to move forward.
I think there's another point as well, Howard, that I've been talking about for some period of time. The candidates that we want to speak to, generally speaking, can't speak during the day. They're working. It's very difficult, and they're going to find it a struggle, of course, to participate in video interviews during the course of a day. But obviously, that's going to be difficult. Does this now mean that we're moving into a longer hours for recruitment businesses? I know we already work long hours, but are we going to work a system where we have staff coming in early and staying late? Or is it the case that, and I'm sure this will be the case, that we can arrange for consultants to be at home helping to conduct interviews in the evening? Because a lot of these video discussions will probably take place after work, when it's easier for people in the comfort of their homes and in the privacy of their homes to have those confidential conversations. So I think that moves us into a different space that we'll be moving into. We already work in a 24/7, 365-day-a-year industry. Maybe we're stretching hours and we're working shift systems for our consultants. And I think it's going to be interesting, because we know that, as I say, the time to speak to candidates, the time to get candidates to talk to clients, if we're using this medium, will be before and after work hours. So I think, again, that raises some questions in terms of how we start looking at how we utilize our staff in relation to serving our candidate and client base.
Well, I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword, Paul. And the way I look at it is that if you look at what consultants are doing now, either whether they're furloughed or whether they're working from home. And as they start to work from home, they get more comfortable working from home, they get more entrenched in working from home. And as it says there on the screen, it becomes their happy place. It becomes an easy place to work once they've sorted everything out and they know what's going on. A couple of people called me today saying, unfortunately, I can't make today's webinar because it's my day for childcare. It's my day for teaching their kids, etc. And also, once the schools go back, I think there's going to be a big swing in, if you're a 30-man recruitment agency, do you need 30 desks? Do you need potentially 40 desks because you want to expand, etc.? Or could you scale that back and say we can have a certain amount of people working from home, a certain amount of people going out to see clients, a certain amount of people on holiday, a certain amount of people in the office, and you can almost rotate people in and around the office. So I think working from home is going to become more and more the norm, and therefore, is it not just about stretching the hours? Is it we could become more focused within the hours, so you could become almost European to a degree? And I know we've spent the last how many years trying to get out of Europe, but that siesta that Europe have during the day, where almost from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock everything sort of shuts down, is that an opportunity that the UK can change its work-life balance quite massively and provide a far better balance for our staff, for our clients, for our candidates? And I think as people get more happy working from home, the way we coach and the way we train our people, the systems we provide to them, are going to be absolutely paramountly important for your employer's attraction policy. So any sort of employment attraction policy coming in is going to be really key. And I'm really key to sort of look at what people have started to introduce into their business with regards to technology that makes that happy place even easier to work from, and how you then control that from a management point of view as well as from a consultant point of view with regards to tracking what they're doing, ensuring they're on track. Or have we become a more trusting environment since COVID-19? Because how many clients did I speak to before COVID-19 and said, that guy'd be far more productive if he was allowed to have a split week, some working from home, some working from here, and it was all about trust. They would never let them do that because of trust. Well, now they've had to do that. So have people's I suppose opinions of working from home changed, and how dramatically have they changed?
Well, I think it's a very good question. Just before I answer it, we've got a question here from, well, a note from Catherine Murtagh. She says, I think the best way to encourage a movement towards video interviewing is by starting to communicate with our clients via Zoom, which should give them the confidence to use video for interviews. Start with your current users, and hopefully this will encourage both staff and clients to move forward. I don't know if it's possible to get Catherine to join us briefly.
She should be on the phone now, Catherine. Can you hear
us?
There,
Catherine?
Okay, perhaps she's not.
No, Catherine? Are you there, Catherine? No. Okay. Well, if we can get Catherine in a second, we'll bring her in. But just to talk briefly about your point, Howard, I think that this point around working from home opens up a whole range of options and opportunities. We've talked ever such a long time about people being able to balance their work lives, and obviously our name comes from that. This opportunity is there for us to expand our workforce. We could be using people all over the world. If, like Milo, you're working in the States, for example, we can be employing people who are living in the States. We can look at how we can expand our workforce by introducing people into the company who aren't necessarily coming into the office. Catherine says, sorry, can't get the microphone to work.
So that's a prime example of technology, and sometimes how it can be a hindrance and how it can be a positive. That we're talking via this webinar, we can email, we can talk, and sometimes the microphones don't work, etc. And that's what we talk about, training our staff to come around this type of objection and this type of problem to ensure that communication is smooth and constantly running. So it's interesting that although we can't speak and hear Catherine, we can still email and talk to her through the chat box and through the question box and things like that. And it's understanding how those things work and what goes on from there. So I think, understanding the technology capabilities of everybody is really important, and therefore your IT and your support in IT will be really important. So I'm interested again to see who's put any form of strategy in place or implemented a strategy around their IT and around governing people working from home.
It's an interesting point, because everybody that I work with, and you, Howard, within no time at all from the beginning of the lockdown, had people working from home. And I've been speaking to very large recruitment businesses who almost, within a day or so, were able to mobilize or demobilize their teams and had them working from home really efficiently. Something that we would have planned months in advance, we did in days quite recently. And I think it's proven to everybody that it is entirely possible to have people working from home very effectively. There is another question that comes up, and I'm sure I won't be alone in saying this. So I need to be careful with my words here, but there's a statement that says, what kind of people in terms of experience and maturity and ability are you comfortable with within your team that you will allow to work from home? And which of your team are you less comfortable having working from home? So what's come up quite often in the conversations I've been having, and it's understandable, is that newer staff, less experienced people who need a lot of care and attention and support, whilst working from home, have not done an awful lot. They can see from the CRM system that they're not logging on very often. They can see from call logs that they're not making many calls and so forth. Whereas more mature people who have been in the business for a longer period of time, are working very hard. So I suppose I'm going to be careful that I don't generalize, but I'd be interested to know what the guys out there are thinking in terms of their view of who they would be comfortable having working from home, either split weeks, several days, or full time. And that group of people, they're less comfortable with working from home, because I'm certainly having those conversations with my clients.
Certainly I can help on that, because as you know, I created and built a business that had a 0-hour policy, and not the Mike Ashley type. Basically, you could work the hours that you wanted, and you had zero holiday entitlement, i.e. you could take as many holidays as you wanted. And what I found was that people, because they were being trusted now to work in that way where they could choose their working hours and working times, I found they actually came to the office more. They was in the office longer when they were in the office. They actually took less holidays as well. And that was the thing that really sort of shocked me, that they took less holidays because there wasn't the pressure to take their beloved 25 days holiday, etc. And they could take those holidays when they want. But what I found that the things that really helped with that was having a genuine structure within the business and terms and conditions within the staff's contract, that they understood exactly what that meant and that it was a privilege and not a right. And we had things in there that said that if you were below 80% of your annual target, then for the next quarter, unless you improve that percentage, then those rights would be removed and you'd be asked to come back into the office, etc. We also said for new people coming into the business, i.e. new recruits coming into the business, that they had to pass their probationary period in order to be given the rights to work from home, etc. Which means that we could train and develop people when they came in. We could spend an awful lot of time with them, focusing on what they were doing and making sure that they had the absolute maximum tool set for when they were sat at home. We also then, as we've done here with ourselves, with the training academy, we set up online training portals that they could access any time of day, 24/7, to upskill themselves. And again, what I found was that they were doing that. The big thing was then driving everything through the CRM, that if it wasn't on the CRM, it didn't actually happen. And therefore, if it didn't actually happen, what are you doing at home? And what we found was that when people were at home, they were actually filling the CRM in more consciously and more purposely because they were being viewed from that point of view. And after a while, that became the norm constantly. And therefore, we had a very clean CRM, a very up-to-date CRM that became a very, very, very valuable tool to the business and actually enabled us to make placements. It meant that we could actually drop our job board usage by almost 80% because we were finding the majority of the candidates were on our database rather than being lazy and going out onto the job boards. And so it had a massive change to that. This will be a bigger change as well as we knock-on effect from there. But that's what we did to help that.
So I've got Abby from Truly Tailored Recruitment, and everyone can see a question, I think. Can we get Abby on? She says, I have grave concerns about this infinite holiday and work when you want idea, especially if this is contractual. This crisis is a perfect example of how this could affect us all under contract law. But I don't know if you can get Abby there, Howard. I know Abby.
Should be on now, Abby.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Hi, Abby.
I hear you, Abby.
How are you both? You well?
Very well, thank you, Abby.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm absolutely fine. The most important thing is everybody's fit, well, safe. You know, the rest of the stuff starts to pale into insignificance, doesn't it?
It's so true, very true. So, Abby, tell us a bit more about your concerns around this point.
I guess this topic actually has, since the crisis came, I think initial panic was, of course, cash flow and all that stuff, and then it was furlough. Now all that's died down. Now that the talk seems to be around what happens when we all return to the new norm, because things are going to be different. There's the introduction for some businesses of tech, where perhaps other businesses have been using tech more. I was going to say wisely, that might not be the right term, but, you know, they've been using stuff like Zoom and video conferencing and video interviewing and so on, where others perhaps haven't. And I guess maybe my feelings are linked specifically to my business. There's only 6 of us. 50% of my workforce are part-time. So in essence, they've got the flexible working that they requested. My fear is, and having worked through a recession previously, is my recollection of that time was that actually it was all hands to the pump, all hands on deck, and you worked, quite frankly, whatever hour, all the hours, millions of hours, to enable us to get back on track and to earn the cash, especially now that we're going to need to claw back from these problems. So my first issue, I guess, is who gets the flexibility. The part-timers have already got that. It feels like the effect will therefore be lumbered and left with the only 3 full-timers, when do they get this flexible working, come when I want, go when I want? Who answers the phones during all that time? A response I've had currently is, well, tech can do that because the switchboard can be transferred to your mobiles. I'm not sure that this coming and going in terms of, from a consultative point of view, consultants, especially during sales time, tend to bounce off each other. So that concerns me. And really the contractual side of it is, you know, and it was a topic that came up very briefly this morning. I haven't explored it enough, but I thought this might be a good space to start talking about it, is under contract law. If all this stuff's written in your contracts, how do you fare? And hope to God, touch wood, we'll never have a crisis like this, but we didn't think this one was coming either. What then happens to us under contract law with these infinite holidays, and especially because at the moment, the rules are that holidays seem to be being accrued. Well, at what rate, if they're infinite? When do we get them?
So I think, go on, Howard.
I can say I can answer all of those because they're the questions I actually had when I set that all up. So we set their holidays for accrual at 25 days, which was then set into their contract. So their contract was based on a 25-day holiday plus national stats. So they were accruing those holidays all the way through if they weren't taking those holidays. But that accrual was only there used if the actual person left the business to accrue the holidays that they hadn't taken during that period of time. Because they have infinite holidays, means if they don't take the holidays, you don't have to carry the holidays over, you don't have to pay the holidays at the end of the year. And people understood that. And because we found that that was then mandated in that way, and the legal terms were signed and agreed from everybody, and we brought lawyers in to have a look at all of those things. We found that because of the trust that you sort of engendered into your staff, that they tended not to take as many holidays. And I always remember, certainly at Part of Computer People, the time of year I absolutely hated and loved was that back end of November, beginning of December, when people are absolutely driving to hit their targets and teams were trying to hit their targets. However, all of a sudden you might find that half your team was off on holiday because they still had 10 days to take, and we weren't allowed to carry those days over. So they took all those 10 days and had a massive long Christmas break. And it was a really painful time for people left in the office because they were picking up all the work. Because they haven't got those type of pressures, then they can sort of use their holidays as they see fit, and it becomes more of a trusting, and they become more relaxed. And that includes the, you know, I'm not going to come to work on Friday. I'm taking the missus or the mister away for a long weekend. I'll do some work from home, and then I'm off and going. There hasn't got to be that sort of massive planning from work about what's going on. The flip side of that was your question about, you know, technology can help, and it is about setting technology. The thing that I found that what you're talking about there with regards to the camaraderie of the sales staff and the sales people, they came into the office more. They were in the office earlier and they worked later, and they came actually into the office. So although they were able to work from home, they found it far more conducive to their work-life balance rather than their home life balance to actually be in the office and bouncing off people. So they still came to the office an awful lot, but it was more for their own self home life balance that they actually took the holidays when they wanted to take the holidays and took the time that they wanted the time. So it was quite an interesting view, because I had all the fears that you would think you're talking about there when I introduced this, but it was the trust within my staff. And I only had one or two people that truly, well, I wouldn't say truly abused it, that minorly abused it. And once they were brought back in line, they stopped abusing it. Everyone else was absolutely brilliant. And that will go down to how you recruit people on the behavioral sides and the behavioral traits that you're looking for from those staff. So there is law already out there that you can govern this by, and there are already contracts out there that you can put in place for this. And then it's about the people that you recruit and work with, Abby.
Yeah, I think my concern is, and again, it might be linked specifically to my business, is that we, as I said, we're a small team of 6. 5 out of those 6 actually are parents. So I will assume, potentially wrongly, given that they already fight for who has what holidays during summer holidays, that I've potentially got 6 weeks of summer holidays or 2 weeks of Easter, a week during half terms, etc., where everybody says I'm not coming to work.
So we always stipulated on that there'd only be a certain percentage of the business allowed off at any one time. So that means everyone, and the only time you would sort of negate that would be around the Christmas period, where if you want to give everyone a Christmas holiday off, etc. But the rest of the time we said there would be only a certain percentage of the people off at any one time. So you still had to book those big holidays in. Day here, day there wasn't such a problem. But if you were booking a 2-week holiday, and again, we had a stipulation you couldn't book more than 2 weeks without a director's approval. So they were still coming in and saying, we're taking this holiday, we're taking that, and keep us informed of the holidays. And there were still rules around those holidays. But one of the big rules was a certain percentage of the business had to be in situ at that time. Therefore, you had to check if you were going to book a long-term holiday, anything more than 2 days, you had to check that there was enough people in the office before you took those days off.
Abby, I think I would add something that, just to pick up on Howard's point, a couple of points actually. You know, I remember many years ago when technology really started to take off. There was a lot of news, a noise in the news about people will all be working from home. And that's the death knell for offices. And I remember doing quite a few radio interviews at the time with a journalist asking me, is it the case that we're not going to have people in the workplace? And I said at the time, and I was proven right, that to pick up Howard's point, that people come to work not just to work, but to socialise. And I know it's true. We enjoy working with other people. We like the cut and thrust, particularly in our industry, of pitting ourselves against others. There are people I've spoken to in the last few weeks who've said, I feel like I really miss, you know, the competitiveness that I get in the office where I'm working with others. And I like to be the top of the league table. I like to pit myself against other people. And I like the buzz. I enjoy the giggles in the office, that chat over the water cooler. And I think that it's something that's very important for us. I think a blend of, and I think Howard's right, it has to be contractually, to your point, contractually very tight. But I think that it's a blend of work, sometimes working from home, sometimes working in the office. And to Howard's point, I think there are lots of people who would prefer not to work from home, that would much prefer being in work because they find it distracting being at home. And as I said a moment ago, I think there are some people, and Howard made the point, who you really genuinely feel can't work from home at this stage because they're new, they're young particularly, and they need a lot of tuition and development and support from us. So I don't think it's possible to have a sort of global policy that you give to everybody. I think it is a case of looking at who you have and their circumstances and so forth. But I think if we take a broad view, it's not inconceivable, as you've done, to start to bring in really highly valued staff members and help them to work for you, to be productive, profitable for you, and at the same time, give them a balance that works for themselves and for their personal lives. And you know, Abby, there are lots of companies up till now that have said, absolutely not. We're not going to have this part-time balance, as they might term it, people working from home or people coming in for split shifts. And I think that attitude is going to change when we move into this new era. But you are right to point out the contractual issues, and Howard's done a great job in explaining some of that. And I think that we should remain open-minded to the opportunities and the ability to find good quality people to work for our companies.
I think as we're sort of running out of time, just very quickly, thanks for that, Abby. Just moving on to the last question, is obviously people, whether they've been furloughed or whether they're working from home, as we come back into work, some people are going to need retraining and have people actually put into place an onboarding strategy for bringing people back into work. What we have to remember is that though they may have been out for 6, 8, 10 weeks, it's not as if they've been on holiday or they've been on long-term sick and they're coming back. Clients have also been off this period of time as well. And the way the world is working and the way the world is recruiting is changing massively. So has anybody actually put into place an onboarding strategy to help not just upskill the staff on a weekly basis, but when they come in, have a genuine sit down, onboarding, training and development plan to help their staff really take advantage of the new way of working?
Well, I think Milo kind of raised this point earlier, and I think it's a good one. I mean, I think that we've got this opportunity now that there's a view, touch wood, that we're moving towards a better place, that we really need to start gearing up our people, getting them in the right mindset. And this is, I think, twofold. This is to do with techniques and training, and we talked about some of those earlier, but it's also a lot to do with mental health and getting people to be thinking far more positively, far more cognizant about what clients are going to be wanting to do when they get back to work. And a very valid point here is this. We know that the world is on pause. I keep on talking about it. The pause button's been pressed. Hopefully we're moving towards the play button very shortly. Our clients are going to be very driven to get back to work and start to put their foot down as hard as they can to make up for lost time. In the way that we want to get back and start being productive, building revenues, getting our cash flow moving again, our clients will be at least as driven as we are. And if they're driven to get things moving because they're chasing productivity, they're chasing profits, then they will take us with them. So actually we might find, let's hope this is the case, that we're going to see a very sharp movement forward within a very short period of time with our clients getting back to work and wanting to push on very fast. And to serve those clients, we need to get our people ready to go. So this is this training maxim that we ought to now be getting people not just sort of jogging, but beginning to warm up. I mean, I'm beginning to get into some sort of athletics analogy here, but we do need to get them starting to move faster, get a bit fitter, so that when we get into those running blocks and the gun goes, we're off and we're sprinting. And I think we're into that phase now. And a lot of the things that we need to be doing with our people mentally and in terms of the training we're giving them is getting them to that point of peak fitness. So when the starting gun goes, as businesses, we're ready to serve our clients and to serve our candidates. And all being well, that day is very soon. It's not 6 months off. Hopefully it's no more than 4 to 6 weeks away. So I think that as owners, as leaders, as directors, we need to be really thinking now about training our guys, getting them fit, not only as it were physically, but mentally. And I think we can do that. We can do that with the furloughed staff as well. And that doesn't breach the government guidelines. In fact, it's in accordance with what they're looking for. So we're now in that period. We weren't before, but I think we are now.
So I think to sort of cap that off, Paul, I think you're absolutely right that it's imperative that we train and develop staff. And I think a lot of business owners have been very focused on the business, and as someone said earlier on about the cash flow, the pipeline, etc., etc. And they've probably got the business strategy started to formulate and start to implement that. What the staff need to do is get their own strategy right. And the training session that I'm actually running tomorrow is about getting your desk ready and right for the new way of working. And I'm going to use an old training session that I've done before, but I'm then going to put the new way of the new world inside that to make people think about what they can be doing and what differences it could make between now and when that kicks off. And I think we've used that sporting analogy last week. This is like waiting for the Olympics. You will still have requirements coming in, although not as many, but your goal is to, when the Olympics comes, to be ready to win that gold medal. And therefore it's getting yourself mentally prepared, physically prepared, systems prepared to actually deliver that. Because just going out and running a race isn't just about running the race. It's about the equipment that you have to run that race in, the systems you put in place to actually develop your skill set to actually be able to run that race, etc., etc. And they're the things that we've got to be sort of putting into place now. So I'll say we've just sort of crept over the hour. Has anybody else got any questions or any thoughts or anything they'd like to ask Paul or myself?
Just whilst we're waiting for that, just a point from Milo saying humour and laughter are a great thing for mental health. One laugh a day should be a mantra during this time. It can't all be driven by fear. And I mean, it's true. You know, you have to try and, it's not that difficult, get joy out of every day. Look at the weather, smell the air. It smells great. And I think just an important point here, and I believe this with all of my heart, that the new world of work, the work world that we enter when this comes to an end will be a different place to the one we left a few weeks ago. Make no mistake, the world will be different. After every major world event, things change forever. I mean, we saw that we didn't, but after the Second World War, the world changed enormously. We are now in the technological era. We will see a lot of changes once we get back to work. Not instantly, not the day we set foot back in the office, but over a reasonable period of time. And guaranteed within 2 years, when we look back, it will be a different world. And I think one of the things that we need to be talking to our people about right now is, what does that modern world look like? What do we believe it's going to be? And how are we going to adapt our business model to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be out there? For sure, the old business model, the ones that we had prior to this, need to be reviewed, need to be upgraded. Not every business, some businesses were already doing great, but a lot of our businesses now, we need to be looking at and thinking, where do we finesse our practices, our policies, our procedures, our techniques? And how, as you've said, Howard, do we use technology and the infrastructure, the support system around that to take advantage of opportunities? If you go into this new world of work with the same mindset and the same business model you had prior to this point, I think that you'll see your business go backwards. This is the opportunity to engage our people over the next few weeks to hypothesize, what will the new world of work look like? How do we change the way we work? How do we alter our policies and procedures? How do we hit the ground running? And that's a great opportunity for us all.
So to wrap up there, we've talked about an awful lot today and got through an awful lot. I hope you found it extremely encouraging. I hope you found it extremely sort of motivating, the things that we can do as an organisation and as opposed to a recruitment industry can be massively changed and completely change the way we are viewed by the outside world. If you've got any questions, feel free to send those questions through to Paul and I. For those who want to go onto the webinar tomorrow, I'll be sending more links out, but if not, look for my links on my post. I've got lots of webinars coming up on those type of things. And that just leaves Paul and I to say thank you very much. Stay safe, stay happy, have a really good week, guys, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Keep safe. Thanks for joining us.